Hello, I hope you're doing well today. So today I'm going to share with you my favorite books of all time. These are the books that I absolutely just cannot live without, and I just cannot see myself roaming the earth, inhabiting a new space without them. These books are all very dear to me, and I either think about their themes constantly or they have in some way, shape, or form molded my mind into what it is now. And we'll first begin with a recent read, which is Sula by Toni Morrison. I read this book in 2022, around this time last year, and it follows our main character, whose name is Sula, and her friendship with Nell. It is set in a segregated town in Ohio, and it basically explores themes of female friendship, also like familial ties, motherhood, being a daughter, as well as what it means to be an outcast or a pariah in a society as a woman, and what that entails when you don't fit into the societal norms and expectations. And Sula is great. Mainly though, I would say it's about female friendship between Sula and Nell, how it changes and evolves throughout the years. And the writing in here is stunning. There's just so many themes and like deliciousness that I sit and ponder on within this novel. I absolutely recommend that you read Sula if you have not already. I love Toni Morrison, one of my favorite novelist writers, and Sula is definitely one of my favorite books. I think it just really made me appreciate the ways in which fiction can accurately be a representation of true complexities within female friendships. So, Sula by Toni Morrison. This is my writing Bible. I think about this book all the time. I absolutely demolished my copy. Every other page is dog-eared. This is Upstream by Mary Oliver. Upstream is Mary Oliver's reflections, observations on art, the creative process, her creative process. Also a little bit of literary analysis of like Walt Whitman. Edgar Allan Poe was my favorite essay in here, and you'll see why a little later. But I just loved Mary Oliver's reflections on art, nature, making sense of the human condition through that, and Of Power and Time is my favorite essay on writing ever. It was just so good. It feels a little bit like, not only if you were a writer you would appreciate this, but then also a literature lover, an avid reader, you would really enjoy this collection. And as I was saying, Mary Oliver would quite literally walk upstream in this novel and observe animals and just do Mary Oliver things. You know, she is a true nature poet, but one of my favorite writers ever. Love her. Life on Mars by Tracy K. Smith is the book, the poetry book that made me fall in love with contemporary poetry. I went through a phase when I was in college where I was just doing like the assigned readings. I wasn't really finding any books that I felt was an accurate depiction of my taste until I came across this in my creative writing course. And when I tell you, I love Life on Mars. If you don't know, I love anything that has to do with motifs of outer space. This has a lot of them. And Life on Mars is about the grand, but then also the singularity of human life. And it accurately captures the ways in which life itself is a universe within the universe. Like, there's so many complexities within this human existence. Like, what does it mean to love? Where does love originate from? And it often ponders the cosmic origins, or tries to kind of like, in a way a nature poet would look at, like a river or habits and instincts of animals to make some parallel to the human condition. Tracy K. Smith does that, but with occurrences in outer space. She's also like a huge David Bowie fan, so David Bowie is reflected in this piece a lot, and these poems a lot. Well, not a lot, but she references him. I had the opportunity to listen to Tracy K. Smith talk about her second poetry collection, Wade in the Water, which I read too. But she visited my college when I was at Rutgers, and I got to hear her speak. So it was just life-altering. Tracy K. Smith is also a Black woman poet, so I just felt like very represented from this collection, and I just love it. Like, I wish I would have written this. Amazing. My favorite short story collection of all time, Heads of the Colored People by Nafissa Thompson-Spires. I am not sure why this does not have more hype around it, because it is honestly surreal. Like, the stories within this are beautiful, and it contemplates Black identity, specifically in America, but through the lens of Black people occupying spaces that are not typically associated with them in literature, at least from when I read at this point. Like, there was a story about a character in here who was a cosplayer. He dressed up and like various like comic book or manga characters. There was a piece in here about middle-class Black mothers sending passive-aggressive notes through their daughters' backpacks. There was also a story in here about a Black woman who was a adjunct professor, and she's navigating the hierarchies of academia. It was just so good, so refreshing to me, and the stories in here are so vivid. I think about them all the time, and this short story collection just really made me appreciate the ways in which fiction can illuminate the truths in life. And yeah, I just love Heads of the Colored People. Everyone needs to read this, like, seriously. When I talk about this book, the people who have read it are like, this is an amazing book and it deserves more hype, and I 100% agree. So I recommend that you read this. I have Animal Farm by George Orwell, which is pretty funny, I think. I love Animal Farm, to be honest. I love the themes that are represented, and the best way that I can break this novel down, my favorite way to do so is to use like an analogy to Mean Girls. Lindsay Lohan's character, Sadie, she's new to the school, and her friends are trying to overthrow the plastics, so they send Sadie undercover, and Sadie ends up becoming worse than Regina George. That is essentially the plot of Animal Farm by George Orwell, but it's an amazing look at how power can corrupt, and I just love Animal Farm. It's very short, easy to read classic that I think is a good place for beginners too. Now, this next book has a very special place in my heart because it introduced me to one of my favorite poets, writers, and that is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This novel, this was just everything to me. I actually read Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong, and honestly, anything Ocean Vuong has ever written is an instant fave in my eyes. And On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous follows the perspective of Little Dog, who is a Vietnamese immigrant into America. He is writing in English letters about his experience immigrating, family, just about identity, queer identity. It was just so good. Writing these letters to his mother, who cannot speak, read, write English, and so it's kind of like a tell-all, bearing every bit of his soul to his mother, and the fact that he knows she can't read it, just, it's like an added layer to it in my eyes. And yeah, I loved On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I read this at the start of 2021, I want to say. It's been a while. Yeah, 2021, at the start of my booktube journey too, so this book has a lot of sentimental value to me. Another fave is Bluets by Maggie Nelson. This is a little collection of vignettes that focus on the color blue. The speaker is obsessed with blue and uses blue as a means to ruminate on many different things. Her friend was recently in a pretty bad car accident, so she talks about the struggles she has with her friend, like the fact that her friend's life changed so drastically, Also about relationships and just like all of the things. It's about depression, love, existentialism, all with the color blue. Oh my god. In here too, a lot of motifs and references to the scientific, outer space, weather, atmospheric things. Bluets, you need to read it if you haven't already. I have here the selected poems of Edgar Allan Poe. And I love Edgar Allan Poe's poetry. I think I started reading him when I was in like 6th grade. Like, became a fan. Like, read the short stories, got like The Gold Bug, The Telltale Heart, all of the things that we know Edgar Allan Poe for, as well as the poem The Raven. My favorite poem though by Edgar Allan Poe is Annabel Lee. It's just so haunting. It's about a girl that he loves but she died. His now unrequited love for her. Edgar Allan Poe's poetry is haunting and just unsettling, but in the best ways. But yeah, Edgar Allan Poe made me want to become a poet, and he also facilitated my spiral into Gothic literature, which I actually don't really read much of now because I spook very easily. But I love Edgar Allan Poe. So I had to grab this, and this was also gifted to me by one of my family members, and there's a note in there, so I try to bring things like that too that have sentimental value. I have Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This was my very first James Baldwin read. I've only read this and The Fire Next Time. I loved Giovanni's Room, specifically the way in which Baldwin uses his characters as allusions to the biblical. Like, Giovanni's Room in and of itself is a Garden of Eden for David, who is our protagonist. This is set in 1950s, an American living in 1950s Paris. So at the time, you know, he was struggling with his queer identity. He meets Giovanni, they fall in love. But it's a devastating story because of David's struggles with that, with self. Like, he self-loathes in here. I don't know. But the writing is beautiful. Just the atmosphere is stunning. And like I said, there's just so many allusions in here to the Garden of Eden. And I just have a lot of notes. I was trying not to demolish this copy, and in my notebook I wrote out a full essay, so that's how I know I love a book, when I could just really go in and analyze the characters. Okay, some books on writing that aren't Upstream. I'm going to mention these two very briefly. This is In the Margins, On the Pleasures of Reading and Writing by Elena Ferrante, but in specific I have to mention Pain and Passion, which is Elena Ferrante's basically why I write essay, and she discusses the importance of the margins, the red line margins on paper, as being a way to contain the fragmented I, a combination of sensibilities she feels as a writer, but then also the way that Elena Ferrante takes genre and tries to subvert it and shows the ugliness within humanity. It's just so good. If you have read My Brilliant Friend, The Neapolitan Quartet, The Lost Daughter, Days of Abandonment, those are all mentioned in here. I've read most of them, or I'm like familiar enough with her work to get those references, so I highly recommend. I loved Pain and Passion. It's like my second favorite essay on writing, and then my third favorite would be Joan Didion's Why I Write essay. I love that one too. But yes, so In the Margins, and then also Patti Smith's Devotion. I love this, and I'm not gonna lie, I tried reading, I'm blanking on it, but I'll insert the picture here. I tried reading this. It was hard for me to get into, but I ate this one up. I just thought it was so good, and the way that she showcased her writing process and devotion. There is, the beginning of this book is her visiting Paris and talking about all of her literary icons. And then within this, she has a short story about a girl who is so devoted to becoming an ice skater and what that means. And then it goes back into Patti Smith's devotion to her writing life and being a writer. And writing at Camus' desk and just doing whatever she can to write. And I love this. I loved how it was presented. Highly recommend. And then last but not least, two recent favorite poetry collections. I am missing Dreamwork by Mary Oliver, which is very weird to me. I love Dreamwork, my favorite Mary Oliver poetry collection. And then these two, my recent favorites from this year, Satan Says by Sharon Olds, which I talked about in a recent wrap-up, but basically poems that explore girlhood, womanhood, motherhood, being a daughter, through the lens of like religious angst and through the lens of a religion that was enforced or reinforced in such a way where like baser impulses of being a woman and the fears and anxieties surrounding that are like disregarded a bit, you know? I don't know, but please read this. Oh my God. I would just want to shove this in everyone's face. It was so good. I have dog-eared every other page. Like, you need to read this. And then I also have What to Eat, What to Drink, What to Leave for Poison by Camille T. Dungy. I love this. Poems on nature, again, very romantic poetry, but then also being Black in a segregated South and some like Black experience in America themes. Also romance, and yeah, it was just a beautiful poetry collection. Like, I love this one as well, a favorite from this year, so I just cannot be without it. And yeah, that's it. I've been blabbering on about my favorite books. These are books that I love and adore. I think about them constantly, and I just cannot be in my new space without them. I had to have them here with me. I'll show you a little sneak peek of what my current book situation is looking like. Here it is. This video is kind of like a part 2 to my unmoving and decluttering my bookshelf video, so check that out if you haven't already. Thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. If you've read any of these, let me know what you think, or comment your favorite book down below to let me know what it is. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!